Yeah.
Okay.
We'll call to order the November 10th meeting of the Bethlehem Public Library Board. Before we do public participation, why don't we go around and introduce ourselves?
I'm Gail Sacco, I'm a trustee.
Michelle Walsh, library trustee.
Jill Adams, library trustee. Laura DeBetta, secretary.
Mark Kissinger, library trustee and UHLS board representative.
Sarah Patterson, vice president.
I'm Rachel Reynolds. I'm with MMB. I'm an external auditor.
And Sherry Whiting, I'm the board treasurer.
Caroline Brancatella, board president.
And Jeff Kirkpatrick, the library director.
And before we open it up to public participation, Sarah is going to read our standard statement.
Beginning and ending each library board meeting with public participation is an opportunity for community members to express their thoughts on library operations to the board. Because the purpose of the monthly meeting is to conduct board business, it is not a time for back and forth debate with members of the board. If specific questions are presented during public participation and the relevant information is readily available, the board will make an effort to address the question in the course of the meeting. Otherwise, community members may follow up on any questions by directly contacting the library director or the board via email or speaking to them after the meeting. We will advertise organized opportunities to speak directly with board members. A reminder that all library policies apply at board meetings, including the patron conduct policy and the harassment policy.
Thank you. Do we have any public participation? No. Okay, then. And we will move on to our audit presentation. The audit has already been reviewed by, the audit report, I should say, has already been reviewed by the finance committee. But have the presentation for the benefit of the full board.
So as I had said before, my name is Rachel Reynolds. I'm an assurance manager with MMB. I've been on the library, I think, audit for about 6 years or so now. So Heather was unavailable tonight, so asked me to come and do the presentation. So I figured this year might be a little bit easier to do some slides to just talk about the general items within the audit. I think you're ahead. Many slides. Okay. Just I'll tell you when to click. So as I had mentioned before, we have audited the financial statements of the library. We have certain responsibilities as it relates to that audit, and that is that we have to use professional judgment in designing our audit procedures. We form and express an opinion on the financial statements to obtain reasonable assurance, but not absolute assurance. We also consider the internal controls of the library when we're designing our procedures, but not to perform an opinion on those internal control procedures. We also communicate any significant matters that we would have either to the board or to management. And those could include recommendations for improvements on internal control or just general observations on efficiencies. We perform our audit to be consistent with the plan, scope, and timing letter that we would have sent at the beginning of the audit. That just explains the timing of the audit, procedures we're going to do, significant risks, which we'll address in the presentation, and then if there's any other questions and things like that. We have to state that we are independent of the library. Like I said before, we're your independent auditors, so we have no affiliations or related party transactions with the library itself. Management reviews and accepts responsibility for the financial statements. So the information we take, we do the audit, we assist in the preparation of the financial statements, review those with Sherry, and then those are issued final when we receive the management representation letter. Essentially, they've been reviewed and you accept responsibility for those financial statements. Okay, just want to go to the next slide. As I had mentioned before, in every audit, there are significant risks. It doesn't mean that those risks are actually present, but they're where there might be inherently risky areas. So management override is always considered a risk, and that's under our professional standards. Other risks within the library would be improper revenue recognition. Typically, revenue recognition is always a risk as well. And then there's financial reporting bias. So that would be trying to understate your budget or overstate your budget, depending on the mission of the library happens to be. There were 2 new significant accounting policies that were implemented for this year. There was the compensated absences and then well as the certain risk disclosures. So the compensated absences that affected all school districts, libraries to essentially reassess on how they were going to calculate that potential benefit. The standard also disclosed the rates that you had to use, a methodology to come up with, so that it would be more consistently applied against, again, libraries and school districts. There's certain risk disclosures, we'll talk about it, I put the disclosure included in here, that has to do with your relationship that you have with the school district itself. Significant estimates that are in your financial statements, and all financial statements have a certain degree of estimates. Depreciation is an estimate for useful lives. Your biggest estimates include the compensated absences, as I mentioned before, the OPEB or the retiree benefit that you have for your retirees, and then the pensions plans related to GASB 68 for the ERA system. So those are significant estimates that are included in your financial statements. Great. We also have to communicate if we had any difficulties with management. We're pleased to say that we have no problems with management whatsoever. We have no uncorrected misstatements, which would be an adjustment that we proposed that wasn't corrected by management. We didn't have any of those as well. There's no disagreements with management. And then we also, like I said before, provide a management representation letter that is then signed by the bodies, and then that's provided to us, and that becomes the date of the financial statements. That's when you accept responsibility for them. We're not aware of any other consultations with auditors that were performed, so we just have to make sure we communicate those items to the board as well. For our audit opinions, there are two different opinions. We audited the financial statements of the library and its business activities, as well as its each major fund. And that was for the period ending 6/30/2025. And then in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects, the financial position and the government activities of each major fund. So if you remember a couple of years ago, you had the government fund, your general fund, and then you also had a capital fund. So we have to look at each a different opinion unit, and then well as what I call like the entity-wide, your full accrual basis financial statements as well. So you had an unmodified report, which means you have the best type of opinion that you can obtain. We conducted our audit in accordance with the government auditing standards. Again, we have to be independent and meet our ethical responsibilities. So as part of our firm, we always have to do our ethics training. That's part of like the requirements, as well as just regular CPE that we have to get to be able to do your type of audit. And then we believe that the audit evidence that we've obtained is sufficient to perform our opinions or provide our opinions to the library. So you can do the next slide. Okay. There's also responsibilities of management in the preparation of the financial statements, so doing the books and the records so that we can then come in and audit that information. As part of the auditor's responsibilities, we have to obtain assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement. As in all types of audits, there's going to be a little bit of judgment that we use when we're performing our audit procedures. We identify risks within the financial statements, and then we design our procedures to address those risks. We have to obtain an understanding of the internal control and processes, and then we'll evaluate how the estimates are determined, similar to like what we had to do for the compensated absences. Next one. So our independent auditors report on internal control over compliance. We also have to report on compliance. So we consider your internal controls as the basis for designing those procedures and expressing an opinion. The report, if there was any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, we would also communicate to those. We didn't have any findings, so that's really great that we don't have to report anything. And then we also look at compliance on other matters, and we perform tests of compliance related to laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements that you might have. Again, we had no compliance issues related to that, so that's really good. Next slide. So then what I had just done in here, instead of going through, because you can see the financial statements are, multiple pages, is just did a kind of some screenshots, for lack of a better term, of what your budget to actual is. So you can see over on the right-hand side, it shows if it's favorable or unfavorable. In theory, what you would want to do is to under budget on your revenue and then over budget on your expenses to kind of like that budget neutral environment. So you can kind of see, okay, what we did we originally budget, what were the actual cost, was that in our favor? It's really hard to, again, budget for pension benefits and that type of thing. And again, those have those significant estimates. So you can see overall, that's what the library operations is in a negative position, is unfavorable, but overall, you're under budget, which is the best position you can be under. So the next slide. I just wanted to highlight some of the long-term obligations. Again, you have your current items that are due that are at your fund level, and then you have your long-term focus, which would be your entity-wide, we'll call it, state statements. And that's where the compensated absences are recorded. So that would be in your full accrual statements. So again, under the new standard, this is what the compensated absences would be, and the change that implementing that. And then with the disclosure, we had to show if they were to retire, how much they would be current. So how much would be currently due in the next fiscal period. Then you have your OPEB, which again, is your, retiree benefits that you have. And then the net pension liability would be that liability under SB 68. So just to kind of give you a big perspective of the full accrual financial statements and those potential estimates that are out there. And then as I mentioned before, there was GASB 101, which was the compensated absences, and then the constraints. So what I had done was just put again into the disclosure that's included in the financial statements related to the relationship with the school district for renting the property that is owned and that you guys operate in the building here. So just that was something again new that we previously hadn't disclosed. When that standard came into play, we felt that this fell underneath that standard, required a disclosure. And that's all I have. Is there any questions that you guys have on the statements? I know you've had some time to probably look at them beforehand. If you had any questions, would have funneled them through Sherry, so.
You proactively answered the one thing I was gonna ask you to do, which was for the public especially to explain that those risks and that
Yeah.
they're just inherent and not anything that we're necessarily, doing wrong or anything, they're just
Yeah.
inherent risks. So you
Yeah.
already answered the one thing.
Okay, thank you.
I should say for the benefit of the public again, that the finance committee went over this and had discussion. So does anyone have any other questions before we vote? Okay, I will take a motion to accept the audit report as presented. Gail?
Second.
Michelle is second. All those in favor? The motion passes. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rich.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to review of the previous meeting minutes.
I just wanted to thank particularly Sherry, but also the management of the library. Tanya. Thank you, Tanya.
She loves us.
For being so vigilant and meticulous and careful with the library funds. It's very nice to have such a good, strong staff. Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you. All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. Bye.
I don't think that we've had a date, as they say, since in my time on board. So,
I like unqualified opinions.
Yeah.
We make that happen.
Very much so. That's what we aim for.
Okay, does
So
anyone,
it's all in the packet. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Do your thing.
I was just gonna say, does anyone have any questions, comments, anything on the previous meeting minutes? As soon as Jeff finds them.
The audit is long.
So we-
It's page 50 of that.
That is helpful.
Honestly.
Just scrolling,
Okay, there we go.
okay? Questions, conversation, anything?
I'll make a motion to accept the previous meeting's minutes.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Good minutes. They're passed.
I just reached page 50.
Sherry, our financial and treasurer's report.
Okay, so in October, we received the bulk of tax revenue of 4.4 million. That's collected by the school district and remitted to us. We did transfer 2 million of those funds from our money market account in TD Bank to the account that we opened at the Metropolitan Commercial Bank, because the interest rate there is higher. And we have a lot of flexibility with those funds. We can move them back as we need to. But I think it's the best way to try to take advantage of the higher interest rates. Expenses are tracking about 4.6% under budget at this point. But we will be making the retirement payment in December, which is going to balance things out. And as we go through the year, you know, we'll have more expenses. I don't expect to be that much under budget by the time the year ends. I think we're gonna be under or over budget in health insurance for one thing. And there's probably a few other categories where we might be a little bit over budgeted, but we'll, you know, we should be okay. I mean, I think we'll still show a surplus, but I don't expect it to be as big as this past year's surplus. I just want to make a comment about the fund balance because, you know, we talk about that a lot and I like to keep it in the report, so it's in front of you every month. So the fund balance at the beginning of the year was about 3.9 million. We had net revenue or a budget surplus of 348,000, but we had capital fund expenditures of 643,000. That's, you know, expenses that we incurred through the capital projects, architect fees, and so on and so forth. So we end up with a fund balance at the end of the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025 of about 3.6 million. That's where we stand right now.
Okay, just again, for the benefit of the public, the fund balance serves two purposes, which is one, that we keep money in reserves for a period of the year in which we do not have cash flow from the tax income. And the second, which we'll talk about throughout this meeting for various reasons, is at this time we are funding various projects through that fund balance.
I don't know if anyone has any questions about the report or the expenditures for the month.
Anything? Okay. I would like to make a motion to accept the financial report as presented. Michelle, second. Laura, all those in favor? The report is accepted. Thank you, Sherry. Jeff, the personnel report.
I'm happy to report that I am not requesting any actions for this month.
My favorite kind of personnel report. Okay, no action to take there. Then would you like to move on to your director's report?
Absolutely. Okay, we're gonna talk about the boiler project in ad nauseum here shortly, so I'm gonna skip over all boiler project update sort of stuff in the board report. Do you want to talk, just mention really quickly? I'm happy about this. We did a full inventory. It's taken us starting in September 2024. We did a whole inventory of the library. Unaccounted for items in our 120,000-ish physical items, 522. So I was pretty pleased with that. And then of those, the 238 of them were located. They were just found throughout the whole course of the process as they get moved around by people and dislocated. We were able to identify a few, like we found a couple books that were from other libraries that had somehow snuck back onto our shelves. So we took those home and returned those to their home libraries. But you know, as the staff from collection maintenance has finished this inventory, they start right back over. So we started again.
I was gonna ask about the inventory.
It takes as long as it takes, and then when it finishes, so this is new for us because of the way our, I'm gonna say ILS, and I apologize for that. That's our internal library automation system. And the fact that we can do so many of those things mobily now, so we're able to take the equipment with us out into the stacks, do a live inventory, and just literally run along the shelves. We're not taking the items off of the shelf and moving them back to someplace and doing that inventory there. We do it right on the shelf. So I'm happy that we get an even cleaner collection than we already have, but I was pretty pleased that the collection was as clean as it was by the time we were done with that whole process. So little pat on the back for the folks that spend, you know, the more than a year getting that inventory done. So
Preston.
Yeah.
I just wondered we got nearly 300 that were missing.
Yeah.
Does that include or not include books that you can tell someone checked out, or items that someone checked out and didn't return?
It's not that stuff, because we know where those are. The
Yeah,
things
well,
that are,
that's-
if people check something out and hold it,
Yeah.
we know right where it is. It's sitting at their house or.
So these are things that just kind of disappeared from the building.
You know, and that's, you know, they can, stuff gets stolen. There's a steal rate for every library. Once again, I'm pleased to say how low that rate is for our library, and that is just benefit of the community and the folks that use our library. So it's, it's almost half of the things that would have appeared missing were in fact just misshelved or moved around or placed someplace weird. And it's
Some of our things are at some other library.
oh, without a doubt, some of our things are at other libraries. That's true. And, not all libraries can afford or have the wherewithal to be able to do a full physical inventory, but, anyway, it's,
Is there like a library standard of this, like that you're aiming at, or?
I mean, what I want is zero. I'd love everything to be in its
Of course, zero,
place.
but I mean, is there like a national?
I don't think so. I've never heard of one. How about that? I don't know. We don't even have our own internal standard.
Yeah.
Because we've completed inventories of specific questions. We had some collections that were collections that would be more prone to theft. Some of them were, when it's whatever's the latest and popular thing, those things can be a little bit more prone to theft. So we've done inventory of those things in the past, but we just did an inventory of other things.
That amount isn't even statistically, I mean, it's a fraction of a percent.
Correct.
Right, so.
It includes the library things too.
It does, yeah, and we know that we can't have PlayStation 5 controllers out on the floor because those don't survive.
My favorite part about this is that a new inventory has already been started, so
Yeah.
it's just a continuous cycle
So-
like that.
So thanks, Phil, and your staff. They worked hard and diligently, in the sort of shelf reading, along with shelving and pulling books. The staff does shelf reading, make sure the books are in order, and then this is also part of that, where they're just doing inventory of everything, and that really is just, that's final cleanup on everything and make sure that everything's as it should be. But you can identify miscatalogued items or, because someone's touching every physical. Great. Lots of good stuff this month as far as programs are concerned. Fantastic early literacy programs. You can see we're fully back in the swing of all our story times, the fire safety and prevention, which is a partnership with the Del Mar Fire Department. We had five firefighters here, and the kids even got to try on the turnout coats and all that equipment, which they found is very, very heavy. I think that's an experience that a lot of kids need to have. So we did that. Lots of the trick or treating in the library and all the attendance at the at trunk or treats. Just a lot of great community stuff this month. It's my favorite month for the library director. And then I do want to call out the Great Give Back, which ran just for a couple weeks during October, where we collected a lot of toiletries and cleaning supplies to send over to the Bethlehem Food Pantry. When we talk to them, they say, what can we contribute that isn't just food? What other things do we need to be calling out from the community? And this is what they asked us to work on. So big load went over there. That was up on Facebook, and the guys from the maintenance department moved all that stuff over there. So that's great. The animated film bracket was our most popular sort of bracket thing of everybody's favorite film. Turned out to be Toy Story. So there you go, of the films we had on our thing. So that was a lot of engagement this month for that as well. Continued great with stuff with the Bethlehem Historical Association and painting and our day books, lots of great pictures. So read through as you want to. I do like the felted candy corns. I think this one with the mustache is awesome. So he definitely had to make it in there. We'll roll down to our outreach. We went over to the Senior Living Center next door and did some outreach over there at their request. Here's Robert talking to the folks there. It did turn into a little bit of an AI conversation, Gail. Some of the folks were interested in AI, helping them deal with, just to orient everybody. Trunk or treat. We had 1,200 folks at the attend trunk or treat this year. A little bit chilly, a little bit windy, but great weather overall. Couldn't get it there. Yeah, thank you very much. I had one little kid came up as Piglet. He's like, he's Piglet too. And the mom's like, that's the biggest Piglet I've ever seen.
Shout out to Caroline and Michelle.
Yes.
Who also had
Oh,
great
yeah.
costumes.
Yes.
That was fun.
Very impressive.
We had a lot of fun. I had to think, I realized I had seen another grown adult dressed as Piglet,
Uh-oh.
and it was Jason Kelsey.
Oh, awesome.
For
Me and
those
Jason
of you who do not
Kelsey.
know, a football player. And I was like, you're a good company.
That's okay. Awesome.
But maybe a bigger piglet, we don't know.
He might be
We
a
have to
bigger
compare.
big, might be. He's certainly taller. And then just a quick mention of that the IDA passed the pilot agreement, which includes the library directly for our funding, and that's helpful that we know exactly what we're gonna be receiving each year, because then we don't have to guess how much funding there is, and it makes our budgeting process a lot. Which I appreciate.
Easier, yeah.
Yeah. Other than that,
Well, I would just point out that,
yes.
I don't know if this is quite the right spot, but with the Red Cross doing the blood drive here in the library, I don't know if that's considered a library program or just a community.
It's a library.
Yeah, well, so it went well. It was very, a smooth process, beginning to end. And I would have to say I was given a lot of choices when I was signing up online, and then I saw, oh, it's at the library. I'm a little biased, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to the library, it's nice that we have that here.
That's awesome. I'm glad you're able to take advantage of that. And they like to come here because apparently a lot of people feel like you and they feel comfortable here. They want
Good.
to come here and do their blood donation.
Great.
So,
Oh, if only the room were just a little larger.
if only the room was a little hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're very close together.
It's hard to do that and then to keep the pads open to the fire exits in that room. It's just an oddly shaped room, and it doesn't, they're willing to put up with the weirdness of that room because people like to come to it. So they'll put up with it, but it's definitely a weird room. There's nothing this.
But before you go into the numbers, I personally have had a number of people ask me if the library is doing anything to address food insecurity in the community. I'm guessing that some of you have as well. And I just want to say that last week we posted this, the Bethlehem Chamber of Commerce put together a great list of resources to donate to that are specifically in the town of Bethlehem. Those are organizations that are set up and ready to do this and to distribute those items as needed. So if you're looking for that information, please check out our social media presence, Instagram, Facebook, or if you're looking for that, if you're looking for that information, can't find it, just ask us, we will get it to you.
The Del Mar Progress Club had their monthly meeting here last month, and they asked their members to come in and bring an item for the food pantry. Their meeting, they were so overwhelmed by their membership that they had to come and borrow. We used one of the laundry carts that we had from the pandemic and filled it full. We had to run it across next to the store because they were overwhelmed by their membership as well. So
Even though the give back is over, there's a bin.
yeah.
Here all the time.
So the food pantry bin lives out there at 365. Every day we're open, that's there, and the folks in the town come across at least once a week and empty it. So that's their truth. Yeah, thank you. Numbers, circulation, about equal. We have a number that's coming in a little bit late. You'll see by the time we're done, we'll correct this for next month. We'll actually be up, but essentially circulation is flat, which is okay. Door count was up a little bit. I still, not routinely hitting my 20,000 number, which I like to get, but we're getting closer and closer all the time. And lots of other in-person numbers are up and down. But continued strong use of our e-collections here. You can see 12% e-audiobook increases, e-magazine use up. Interestingly, e-books, so reading with e-books down a little bit, and that speaks to that talking point when we talk about actually reading with one's eyes, when we're talking about that the electronic versus physical format seems to be stabilizing. It's not a rocket like it has been for the past 10 years. It's not going up like a rocket. So that reading is stabilizing. So it's not surprising for me to see a number where in any given month you'll have ebook use down a little bit, but overall e-use continues to go up.
But I do have to say, I am on the ebook list for the new Louise Penny, and I was on the reserve list to make sure that I had all of my bases covered. And the ebook list, there's like 2 copies for 100 reserves, and I have the hard book copy at home and I'm reading it. So there you go. The hard copy went out over the ebook copy.
Yeah. Now, and when you look at that number, when you see 100 requests and 2, when we purchase ebooks under the Advantage program, they do come, our copies come faster,
I know.
but they're still, because of the expense of buying them, we're making decisions about how many of them we buy all the time because of just the expense of the ebooks in general.
Yeah, so I'm sure I'll get it soon, but I was really happy that I got it. because I really wanted to read it.
Me too, especially considering Baker and Taylor folded, so I'm glad that we're able to get those books in quickly. They pivoted very
Sent
quickly.
out and congratulating everybody for moving over to Ingram.
Yeah.
Just a reminder to everyone, to the public, you can return your e-materials early.
Yeah.
You just have to press, when you're done, you just have to press that button and it'll go right back into the pool.
And if they're the reserve list, we appreciate it.
So the New York Times subscriptions and the Times Union.
Yes,
After I thought of the question, I realized it's not counted as part of this. Is it counted? How can?
it's not in here, but
But how can you?
Phil, so excited. So the Upper Hudson's gonna add the Wall Street Journal next year, so we're gonna start, so the Times Union, the way it's counted. It's harder for us to count in a sort of checkout way, but because of the way the New York Times is, you have to go and get that code and redeem the code, there's a checkout. So, and the Wall Street Journal will be the same way. So I do have that number. Phil started reporting that to me this month, and we will. It's hard for me to stick a new number in the middle of this report in the middle of the year, but I'll report that number out as soon as I get a couple months worth. I'll bring it here and talk about it. So did I answer your question?
Yes,
Or-
well, I thought of the question, and then as you were talking about other things, I'm like, oh, that's not in here, the login thing. But I wondered if there was just some way that we were able to track how much usage that was getting.
Right, so we do track, so let's say, talk about database use for a minute, everybody's most exciting and favorite discussion. We do track database use, I don't report it here because it's just not as clean as like checkout,
Like
Well, we do-
Ancestry or something like that.
correct, but we track those things and then we mostly compare them inside, so when we're looking for a renewal, if the cost goes up, we look at the uses and we make those decisions, so those numbers are available. Probably a good idea for me to report them out to you sometime, but I think because of the nature of those newspaper checkouts through Upper Hudson being such a checkout, we can report those, and we probably ought to be, Similarly, it looks like Upper Hudson is gonna add a database called Comics Plus, which is gonna have a lot of full text graphic novels from various publishers, not Marvel, DC, not those comics, but some of the other very popular titles. I don't want to mess up and mention what any of those are, but because I'm not as familiar, but we're going to get a database of that, and then we're going to get those statistics soon. We absolutely would check those as a checkout because it's just a virtual check. Yeah, well, yeah. That's basically it for me.
Any questions on Jeff's report? Okay, Mark, the UHLS report.
The meeting is Wednesday, so there's nothing to report.
Okay. Every month we get a little closer.
Exactly. I'll remember for next meeting to report.
And Jill,
Yay, I
the
went to
Friends
the meeting.
report.
Yeah, I have a report this time. It's
Right.
great. So I went to the meeting in November. It's lovely. I pitched the t-shirt selling idea and they were very interested. And Mary Kennard's gonna take it on and see what she can do with it. But they were happy to hear it and ask some questions just about some logistics, which I was able to answer most of. I'm sure they'll have more questions that I would not be able to answer. But they're gonna get started and see if that makes sense for them.
Great, for the benefit of the public, Jill asked the Friends if they would be interested in the spring book sale. In making some of the library t-shirts that our staff wears available for purchase by the public.
They also, Beth was also at the meeting and informed them of our decision last month to take down the Borthwick house that's on the property that we own. And they were interested to hear that and of course want to know what we're gonna do with it, like I'm sure everybody is. They definitely would like to have some talking points about just what went into that decision, just to take the house down. I discussed with them some of the things that we talked about here, the condition of their house is great. Some board members have seen it, the architect Jeff had reported says, nah, it's not really gonna be able to be used for library purposes. But if we could make that into some lead points for the Friends to use as they get questions about that decision. They also definitely asked me to relate to all of you. They would love to have a consolidated space for their stuff. Mostly book sale stuff, including bins and brochures and signs and stuff. Apparently, right now they have some stuff here and some stuff over here and some stuff there. I don't know where it all is. They would love it if they could have one space to call their own and advice.
I imagine that some of those points we'll at least touch upon during our Porthwick property discussion tonight. So thank you very much.
I think all else is, I guess the only other thing is that their annual meeting is December 15th, and they will be having board elections there and also cookies.
Very important. We'll say it again publicly. If you are interested in helping out the library, a very easy way to do that is you become involved with the Friends of the Library, whose purpose is to support the library in ways that the library cannot act on its own behalf.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to new business. The boiler project. I think it's all good news, Jeff.
Okay, Mike, you wanna come up? I need you to probably drag your chair with you if you wanna come right here on the other side of Sherry and we'll. Oh, thanks. Bring your chair right up.
Gotcha.
Oh, you just sit upstairs.
Go wherever somebody tells me. Hi, everybody. So. We have some items to discuss. We did open bids last day. It was actually very favorable. There's a letter here that I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read through. I'm gonna actually start kind of in the middle of the letter, which is what we call our bid tabulation. It looks like this. So we had 3 bidders when we opened bids, and they're all favorable bids. Your low bidder as of right now is BPL Mechanical Services at $149,966. We had 3 bidders, which is a really good number. It's usually sort of the minimum we shoot for. It does vary from project to project. Sometimes we only have 1, sometimes we have 12. It really depends on the project and the interest and how things are out in the world. In terms of your guys' project, that's a really good for $160,000-ish, $70,000 project.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't seem to have this information in my act. Very good.
Yeah, we can go down one more. Is it right underneath?
Just one.
Thank you, thanks, Dale, sorry.
Yes,
Totally fine.
I was like,
this is all coming in hot,
No,
this is all coming in hot off the press.
I would have given you mine, but I made notes and because I had anticipated a couple of questions you guys might ask, so I was just making some notes. So you want to look at this one? You got yours. So again, good number of bidders. So in our process, what we typically do is after we open bids, we do what we call a post bid review process, which is where we have. Which is where we ask a number of questions. I also attach that questionnaire. But you can kind of see, and basically what it is, it's a way for CSRH and ourselves to go through. And confirm that the person that is bidding provided all of the things they're supposed to bid that we asked them to provide. And so when you read down through this, you'll see we did have one hiccup, which I'm sure some of you have heard of at this point, or maybe not. They did not include its question. Bear with me, question 3, they did not provide their field directed allowance of 25,000. So what that means is in a project, what we typically do is we add a project allowance. It's a conduit of a fund that's part of the contractor's contract. That if we find something we didn't expect, or we need to do extra work or whatever, we don't have to go through a board process to get it approved and wait a month for a board process. It's not to exclude you guys or anything like that. You guys will be part of that process regardless. It just doesn't require you guys to vote basically and say we approve to do this formally through the bid board process. What it does is it really gives Jeff as the director the ability to say, if it's within this allowance and within the library's purchasing process, that he can move forward with that work so that we don't have to wait. Because sometimes things happen, they can't wait a month. Or especially in a project that isn't really even a full month. You don't want to wait a full month for them to get a decision to do $3,000 worth of extra piping they found was leaking that we didn't know. So what that means for you guys is normally what I would tell people is when the contractor discloses this, I don't typically negotiate that. It's one of those things, it's a public low bid. It's not that we can't. Typically, I don't because there's nothing stopping once bids are open. If you look at the summary again, from somebody realizing that if I'm BPI, I could have been $30,000 more and still been the low bidder. Okay, so normally I wouldn't negotiate this sort of thing, and that's what I told them to start. I said, you guys are gonna have to go back and look to see if this is something you want to do. All the while having conversations with Bob Schofield and with Jeff, that we have basically a couple of options. We can negotiate with them if we feel like they're being honest and forthright about what the mistake was that they made. Or we could discard their bid and then go to the next low, which would be, sorry, I think it was T Lemmy at $177,000. After several back and forths and a little bit of negotiating between myself and Bob Schofield, we're able to settle on basically the idea that they would take on half of the allowance and that we would potentially pay them for the other half, which would keep you still under the next low bidder. So when you see this and you sort of look at my letter, we follow through the letter, you'll have all of my pieces here that describe what we did and all of that. And on the second page where you have my signature and the contract amount, there's a paragraph here that just basically explains what I just did and what I did on behalf of the library, including Jeff and Bob Schofield, you know, so that everything was passed through your guys' attorney. He was comfortable with it. And what it basically means is today, when you take your action, if you're okay with what I did, you'll approve their contract for $149,966. Once we execute their contract, we'll write them what's called the change order. We'll increase their contract by $12,500, pushing it up to, I think it's $162,466, which would be still lower than $177. We kind of split the difference. So we understand that they should be held responsible, right? They made a mistake. If Mike made a mistake on the drawings and they wanted to be paid for that, be a reasonable thing. They shouldn't get off scot-free, right? But they also recognize that we could say no to this and you could go to the next low and go to 177. So it's kind of there's not a whole lot of leverage for you guys, but there's not nothing. We did have a couple of other options that I won't get into. They weren't as interested in that. So when you look through this, it'll be you guys are welcome to ask me questions. Before we do, sorry, Gail. Before we do that, know that this was partly discussed through the whole process with Jeff and with Bob Schofield. You are legally, even though it's public low bid, allowed to negotiate with the lows. And there's statements in the law and in your guys' general conditions and contracts and things that basically says, if I find an irregularity or an error, I, as this entity, have a right to ignore that or negotiate it or do whatever. I did that negotiating on your behalf at that point. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, I need to repeat back what you said, make sure I understand.
Absolutely.
You're saying that they made a bid.
Yep.
And normally the company that does the work would be responsible for that $25,000
Yep.
in total.
Correct.
So that may be.
That would normally be
different-
part of their bid.
That may be some of the difference.
Right, exactly.
And so what we're saying to them is that they only need to be responsible for $12,500.
Yep.
And if it goes over that, the library would pick up the difference.
So what you're saying is correct.
That's what. I
Yep,
just
what
want
you're
to-
saying is absolutely correct.
Because you talk construction. No,
I
that's-
know, I totally understand. What you're saying is 100% correct. When it's executed, will look a little different. It'll look like every other project because the way they take responsibility for their 12,500 is in their payment process. And you'll see that as a line item. It'll say allowance 25,000. It won't say allowance 12,500. It'll say 25,000.
The next page has two other areas, number 15 and number 19, that are also yellow. Are those of concern?
Is there any concern with getting proper manpower? Sorry, 15, is there any concern with getting proper manpower to complete the work? No, they have no concern. They're planning to provide 2 people to complete this work. That's very normal for a project like this.
Okay,
No
and number
concern there.
19,
And then 19, our temporary utilities as outlined in the specification understood and complied with. No, there are no temporary utilities. They're
So
not
it's not
providing
efficient.
any, so it's not efficient. No, they're great questions.
and then the last question is, have they been vetted? This is a company I have never heard of. So have they been vetted in terms of their reliability and the quality of their work?
Yes, so we've worked with BPI several times, even recently in City School District of Albany. I've worked with them on other K through 12 projects throughout my last probably 10 years. They are a reputable company. They like everybody else go through ups and downs in terms of manpower and things like that. But I haven't had an issue where they've defaulted or not completed a project or anything.
Is there any contingency in terms of tariff impact, or does this project have?
They have to cover this project based on how they bid as of today.
Okay,
So that's all taken care of and incorporated into what their contract is.
thank you.
If there's another COVID. Right, that's not a foreseen sort of thing. That's not gonna happen. That's gonna happen too quickly. But just for an example, if there's something that happens in the world that's unforeseen, that would be different. Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
And similarly, the field directive allowance was
Yes.
45,000. Is that a contingency?
It is.
So basically, so when Gail suggested, oh, the library will be on the hook for the other 12.5,
Mhm.
we may not be,
You
because
may
there
not.
may not be.
Not even needed. Right.
Is there any way that we would pay more than 162?
If they went through all the contingency, if they went through the whole allowance. So if
So
they
we
went,
could
if,
pay 170
right,
or 175,
you could.
close to the next bid.
Right, but one would also assume that as that bidder is even 177, if there are things we found that were in addition to the contract, they would be paid additional for them too. It's not that they are
Yeah.
177 because they incorporated things back.
But they may have put it in the 25.
Yes, they will, they would have, yes. But even if we paid them the whole 25, you'd still be at 172, I think, which would still be less. And again, that isn't totally an option. You don't have to do this.
Right,
We could go to the next low and pay them. And I'm not suggesting that you couldn't do that.
What you recommend?
I would recommend what's in front of you, when you put it in front of you.
And that's, a lot of that is based on your past experience with this company.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, TLM is just as good of a company. I've never worked with, sorry, I think it's, I'm gonna say it wrong, but I think it's Sam, so I have worked with Jessica before when she was a drafter for TLM. Since then, she's started her own company, I think with her husband. I just never worked with them in terms of a project. So I don't think you would have had any issues if any of those 3 were to have done this project. Just BPI is still up because they were able to sharpen their pencil better. Any other questions? Public allowed there, that's fine.
Not only.
So we would pay,
There'll be another participation fee.
the only way they, I'm just looking at your letter.
Mhm.
So we are agreeing to $149,966. And if needed, they will pay an additional $12,500. They're not paying, or they're paying us 106. How much is this costing us?
162,466.
So they keep the
At the very-
12,500, whether or not they need to use it.
It depends on how much of the 25,000 gets used in the long run. I can't answer that yet because I couldn't answer that till the end.
Let me rephrase the
Go ahead.
question. If
Yeah.
we agreed to pay them 160, whatever.
Yeah, 162,466.
162,000. And they do not use 12,500 in contingency, or they use less than 12,500 in contingency.
It would be paid back to you.
It would be paid back to
Yep.
us. Okay, that's what I didn't
Yep.
understand.
Yep, that is correct.
That's right in the contract.
Yeah, that's what the
Yeah.
allowance is for. Is any unused allowance would go back to the district, sorry, to the library.
Why would we do a change order or something that we may not have them pay?
That's a really good question. The only one I have for you is how I sort of explained it before. That would save you from having to come to the table a month later in case we had found something that was large enough to need more than 12,500. I don't know that you'll do that. I don't know that you won't. We may very well execute this change order and in December execute another one that is for $12,800 for the remainder of the allowance. It's just one of those processes.
Right, it just seemed like they bid the project at 150,000, basically.
Yep.
Saying we can do the project 150,000. We didn't put any contingency in, we were supposed to, but we didn't put 25 in. So we're saying, oh, you know what, we'll give you 152. And just in case, you might go over. But they told us they could do it for 150, why would we? I mean, it just seems like we should just give them 150 and then see how then play it out.
Yep, and so
Yeah,
yep, and I think there is a pathway to do that.
okay,
So maybe one thing I didn't explain. The allowance does a couple of other things for you, just in terms of process.
okay,
They don't typically pay overhead and profit for that. So anything that would be change order related or allowance related, you would pay them 15 to 20% for their markup. That's the other nice piece of the allowance. But I did actually negotiate a thought process like that, Mark.
yeah,
It's not that they weren't interested, it just they preferred this method.
okay.
But also they acknowledged that they didn't include what they're supposed to, so yes, they said they could do it for that, but it was not correct.
They could not need a single dollar extra. That's unlikely. I've never honestly had a project other than a really close one that didn't have some form of change. Whether it's a credit, which is the only, like I've had one that was just a roof. They ended up not having to do a couple pieces of mechanical equipment. Everything else was fine. The school district got like $1,200 back, and that was probably the best project I've ever had in terms of financials.
Yeah.
I've never really had a project that doesn't have in some way, shape, or form, you find something. It is something that always happens. That's why we have it.
And I believe, not that we should not determine the best price and the best path forward, but I believe that we were going into this process with a budget per se of approximately $250,000. So while we want to keep it as low as possible, this is all still relatively good news in terms of our projections for spending.
And if the feel with the board is that we don't like what is happening, we can reject their bid and go to the next person. I wouldn't suggest rebidding because everybody's already kind of seen it. You'd have to go through the whole process again at that point, but you could do that as well. I'm not saying that you have to take this one. It's just my recommendation.
If we were to go that route, with that delay, is there?
It would take me a couple of days to call TLME, have the same process with them, which won't take that long. It's 25 questions. Write an updated letter and go that route. That would be totally fine.
So do we vote on whether we're
I'm-
accepting this contract?
I'm wondering if does the board have any additional discussion? Does anyone want to make a motion one way or the other?
I move that we accept the revised bid, should I say?
And you would just accept it the way that it is.
Okay, I move that we accept the bid from BPI as presented, and also initiate a $25,000 change order. A $12,500 change order, so that if it's necessary to use it, we do not have to have a board meeting. Is that what I need to say? Is that?
You got it.
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone? All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Do you want me to stay for Borthwick or any other questions? I don't want-
No, because what we're talking about Borthwick is what we're gonna do with the property afterwards. And you know what, if you love, if you wanna hang out.
If you wanna hang out, just for numbers. Appreciate it.
Yeah, the demo, I'm really interested in, diving into the channel, I'm gonna see them.
Okay, so then you wanna,
Would you,
I don't mind waiting, whatever you guys.
can we move that up?
you can, you're in charge.
Okay.
Okay. Mike, we're gonna free you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I was sure if there was a policy.
No.
Okay, then in the interest of letting CJ have his night back. We move on to what I think is the most significant point of discussion this evening, which is moving forward with the Borthwick property. As everyone knows, at our last board meeting, we voted to take down the Borthwick house. And move forward, making that green space. So there's a couple things that we want to discuss tonight, and the first, I think, is what we need CJ for, which is what the current, you had given us an estimate at one point, but what, with any changes in the market, you think the current estimate of taking down the house is, and I don't know if you have this, but taking down the house and doing some improvements to the parking lot as well. Do we not have a combined number? Okay.
So
let's take-
we do have his original estimate of what the improvements to the parking lot were gonna be.
Okay.
But we didn't relook at that.
So, what I had originally done was demolishing the house and basically turning it into green space, sort of the way that it is now, minus the house. So removing the house, there was some abatement to do with the house that had to be done before the house got knocked down. Removing the foundations, filling in that area, turning it to grass, and then sort of walking away. I had that in total at just over 200,000. It was $212,923. I think if you're gonna continue to do, I think, and it's gonna happen within, let's say the end of the summer, I think you're still in pretty good shape there. When we actually do the referendum, I might bump it like I did for the boiler project. So I did bump that boiler project a little bit higher with people's fees and things like that, because we had actual numbers at that point. But for right now, I would say I think you're in a safe spot there.
Okay, so about $212,000 for the demolition of the house.
Okay.
And can you remind the board what your previous estimate was for improvements to the parking lot?
Yeah.
Good question.
You got it, Sherry's got it.
Of the 550,000?
Correct.
Okay.
That was.
Yeah.
Pulled right from the same. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
that one, we didn't read that, so we didn't. We looked at that.
I'm not prepared to say whether that is okay or not.
Yes.
I will say it's gotta be close. Maybe the only thing we're gonna be running into is just because of the way oil prices are, asphalt always goes up.
I was gonna say, let's assume that the
Just
number's
always
not
goes.
going down.
But I did have a number of different contingencies in there with sort of trying to cover some of the ground so that it didn't feel so much of a mistake.
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear the number.
550,000.
Yeah, I did hear the number.
So, wow, that's really just to
Working in the parking lot, making it, what were we doing in the park?
So the parking lot project included milling and resurfacing, so it's not
That's
just,
what I thought,
Yeah,
okay.
And there was a storm drain. right
and then
there.
there's a storm drain repair, the sinkhole.
Dollars.
There's a lot, I don't know how much parking lot is out there anymore, but there's not a small amount of parking lot out there.
Wow.
So just to demolish the house would be $212,000. So we are looking at, to do both, we're looking at a total cost of somewhere in the range of $750 million.
So the say it's 220 to take down the house. Can you explain like all the components of that for the public, for the board and the public? Like it seems like astronomical to me
Yeah.
that we were gonna pay almost what we paid for the house. Didn't we pay like around 215 or 200?
I think the hardest part about this is it's all prevailing wage too.
Right,
So that's the other piece that I think gets lost in the thought process.
yeah, I wanna make sure we understand. the
You're
whole-
right,
yeah.
so I mean, prevailing wage in terms of demolition and things like that is not crazy, it's actually probably one of the lower of the wages.
Okay.
But it is 100% certainly more than if you were to call just somebody and have them
Oh,
come
sure.
do it. Because it has to be a certain wage, so I think that's the first part of that will also help fill in some of the asphalt costs as well. It's when you call somebody for your driveway and it's $3,000, just they're like probably paying somebody 15, 20, $25 an hour as a laborer at that point, as opposed to the 50 or 60 they're getting paid as a prevailing wage labor.
Yeah.
So that's the other piece of that, that a lot of times gets lost in this process with public work.
Oh, yeah.
How far do you want me to go with the process? Do you want me to start from
So-
sort of inception through
Yeah,
the
so,
design,
I
through
mean,
SUD? or-
As a layperson, I'm
Yeah.
looking at the house and I'm saying, "Oh, that big.
Yep.
Seems like, you know,
But working within the town, dumpsters within the town, it's right on the side of the road.
right,
So you gotta add that sort of thought process in.
so that requires additional safety procedures,
Correct.
safety protocol and additional time.
Well, I think time wise, it's probably gonna take the same amount of
Okay.
time. There's abatement that happens before that, which again is prevailing wage through that process.
Right, so the abatement has been described to me in the past as the roof tile
And there's stuff in the basement.
and there's stuff in the basement. Okay.
It's the shingles, not the ceiling, it's the siding,
The siding.
the siding and then some heating, regular heating duct system stuff.
Okay, so you have to abate that, all that, or asbestos or some other whatever bad things. And then you can go to,
And then a guy with an excavator or a company with an excavator will come and knock the building within itself into the foundation and then scoop it out into dumpsters.
and then the foundation comes out.
And then they would dig the foundation out. Now, there are people that will come and do a deconstruction, is what they call it. And if there are things in there that are worth salvaging, you know, they can come in and do that. I don't know how much of that is true in that, but like I've been in the house before. I've walked
Yeah, me
through it.
too.
If there's anything of
No,
great significance for the community. That's not my decision to make, but those are things that can be described in that. Those would take longer, but you're talking about maybe a week.
Okay.
You know what I mean, just in terms of the process, and that's a thing that you decide as an entity with it.
Okay.
And just to
What
read, I'm
kind of
sorry,
thing- yes,
go ahead.
what kind of things, like wood?
Sometimes you can save flooring, and they'll save doors in some older houses, depends on the windows. So like, I'm sure most of you have heard like the Habitat Restore and things like that. There are companies that will deconstruct and either sell to Habitat or to other entities and things like that. I don't know that there is anything in the house worth that. I honestly have no idea. We'd have to have somebody that does that answer.
And just to reiterate, the condition of the house between the asbestos and the general condition of the house does not make it worth trying to rehabilitate it, and it's not safe to sell.
I don't know about all of those items. I know that from the work with Ashley McGraw before, that the intent was to take that down. And go inside, I don't know how they determined its safety, validity, all of that stuff.
Okay,
So I would suspect Ashley McGraw did a good job of all of those things. I don't have any reason to doubt that. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it.
We do have a report from Butler Roll and
I
Mays that
just
describe that.
want, because there's been questions and I just want to be clear that the idea of rehabilitating the house is not
So when,
not an option because of the condition.
so when Butler Roll and Mays looked at using the house as some sort of annex building for the library, fundamentally unsuited to being used for any library purpose because of the restrictions that we have on accessibility, the asbestos abatement, and just the nature of it being like a house. It's just not, some buildings could be suitable to be used as offices or used as some sort of other building. It's not suitable for that. It's all the way back to 2018 first review.
So there's several considerations here. There's the condition of the house itself as a house, like as a building. Then there's, does it suit library purposes? And just to make it clear to the public, in taking this down, the building does not cost us nothing throughout the year right now. We have to maintain the building to ensure that there's heat, that pipes don't freeze, things like that. So it is an item on the library's budget. It's not that we're taking something that is costing the library no money and then spending money to get rid of it. We are taking something that is costing the library money, and the intent is to make it more useful to the library's purposes.
And to the community at large, hopefully.
So the abatement is the siding, in the utility?
I wanna say there was something in the flue that went all the way down to the basement. I wanna say there was a sealant somewhere in that process too, Mark, but I have to go back and relook it.
That's right, it's not, I thought it was roof tiles, but it's not, okay,
It's the
it's the,
siding.
Side.
Asbestos.
and that includes the, for lack of a better term, the garage or the shed.
Yeah, with the
They-
whole,
they-
whatever was on the property, and then I think there's a huge pile of paver brick there,
There it is.
like they're gonna take all of that.
Which we're trying to get rid of.
Yeah,
With
yeah.
some bricks. Literally, yeah, yeah. Okay. That's all, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, CJ.
Anything else?
Thank you,
think we're good.
CJ, for working on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So last piece. For the boiler project, this was sort of the end of our services with you guys. That said, like I told you guys, when we decided this, something happens, Jeff's got my number, call me, I'm not worried about a couple hours if there's a problem. But if you don't see us sort of in and out, I'll check in with Mike either way, because I won't be able to let it go myself, but just if something comes up or you feel like something's not right, just give me a call.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So I think the second part of this discussion is we know approximately, we have a budget, we have not a budget, we have
Yeah.
a projection for what the cost may be. So I think then we turn to our treasurer and Sherry, based on what we're about to spend on the boiler, which I think was overall good news. And based on our audit report and where the fund balance is and our projections heading into the next fiscal year. What do you think? Well, I'll ask two questions here. Is it fiscally do you think that if, from a budgetary perspective, that we could do both? We could take down the house and do the parking lot? Do you think it is more advisable to stick with the Borthwick property? And then whether we did, what the budget would be to then, what I'll say, improve the Borthwick property to make it a green space that is useful to the library. What do you think would be a responsible amount for us to do if we were just doing the Borthwick property? A budget to improve it and a budget to improve it if we were planning to do both.
I don't think the timing of doing these projects has any kind of bearing, whether we do it in this fiscal year or next fiscal year. We still have a fund balance, and that fund balance only changes if we have a budget surplus or a budget deficit. Okay, I'm not anticipating a budget deficit for FY 26, but I do anticipate the budget surplus to be less than it was in 2025. It's just sort of a guess. It's really a guess. I'm thinking our surplus will be about 250, somewhere in that range, 250, 275. It's conservative, and it's good to budget conservatively, right? We'd rather have a little extra money in our pocket than not have enough, right? So it doesn't really matter because we have a fund balance of 3.6 million. We need to set aside 1.3 million for funding operations for the first quarter of the year. So that brings us down to about, let's see, 2.3 million. Which would be funds available for projects. However, I wouldn't be comfortable spending all of that 2.3 million because, you know, we never know what the future is going to hold. I think that we could probably spend an additional maybe 200 to 250 on something, whatever the board decides, beyond taking the house down and the parking lot and actually the other project. So if there's some improvements we want to make to that area, and there's some cost involved, I think I would be comfortable spending an extra 200,000 to 250 maybe. I think we'd be okay, being in that range because, you know, in FY 27, we should hopefully have another budget surplus. As time goes on and we're spending money, we're still, we're operating the library and we're spending our budget funds, but we are generally gonna have a surplus each year. So that helps to replenish some of the funding.
Okay, so you're saying that we could, with reserve funds, I just want to make clear, this is no extra expenditure to the public, this is with funds that we have on hand specifically for capital projects. We could do both, take down the property at Borthwick and make the necessary improvements to the parking lot. And on top of that, budget an additional $200,000 to $250,000 to improve the Borthwick property once it becomes green space and make it something useful for the library. Okay. So then I think the next point, thank you very much for all of that. I think the next point of discussion for the board is whether we want to pursue one or both. And then I think as a secondary item to that is Sherry has given her opinion on what she thinks is responsible for us to budget to improve the Borthwick property. We can budget that entire amount, or we as a board can decide to budget less. And again, this is working from lessons learned during the bond project, is that before we decide specifically what we want to do with the property, before we ask the public for ideas, we want to have the budget in mind so that we can work backward from that. So I think the first point of discussion I'll open up to is, do we want to do just Borthwick, which we've already voted on? Or do we want to also pursue the parking lot improvement in 2026?
I'm a big component of doing both.
Me too.
Me too.
Is there any savings to be, would this have to be, fully contracted out and not a partnership with the town?
It is possible. So I was just gonna say, good question. I reached out to the town to talk about whether it would be possible. I think a project of this size is going to be difficult for them to work into their schedule. They're in no way are they saying no, that they're not interested. They're very interested. Everybody at the town is always willing to take the calls. But it's a significant enough size project that it's gonna take a little bit of throwing the football down the field for them to talk about getting that worked into their schedule, right? They have priorities and things that they need to get handled with their paving crews. And a short enough season to get that done. So it might not be summer 26. That might be summer 27. That doesn't mean that it's not worth pursuing with them to get that done. They were very helpful to us with the plaza. And the folks, and it cheaper, likely, certainly easier, because we're not bidding out if we're working with the town. I mean, there would be, I don't believe they're going to be fixing the sinkhole. Like, I don't think that's gonna be town, that's a whole different than separate another section of the town to work with. I think we'd have to get that handled and then work with them to research, because milling and paving they can do. That's, it's a large project, like it doesn't feel large, but it is in fact. And getting all that resurfaced and then painted up, that's something that is possible for us to work with the town. We'll have to make that decision as
That
we.
was my second question, does it include the sinkhole or not?
I've never asked them about the sinkhole, so I don't know, but I've not asked that question, so I wouldn't want to say, yes, that's something they could do, but it seems like that's a different portion of what they do.
Can I ask something? When we say work with the town, do
Yeah.
we mean that the town is doing this for the library? Do we mean
Yes.
that okay,
Doing it for, not bidding that for it, but having the town workers do this as a shared service, and then we reimburse,
and that's was my thing,
we reimburse just as we did with the plaza.
okay.
So they're not doing it out of the graces of some of the part.
Okay.
No, there's still reimbursement.
Yes, a
We
little,
are, but I mean, there's some
They're
significant,
delaying another project they would have done.
possibly, I mean, it needs to be worked in. It's gonna take a lot of conversation, and I think the plaza was in the fall, relatively small. I mean, for the size of the equipment they've got, I think it's pretty easy. This one, in my conversations with the folks next door was not no, but we need to talk about this and take a look at it.
I
And
mean, you lose control of the schedule.
Correct.
That's, I mean, with that.
does working with the town keep this out of the SED process?
It's not, it's a replacement in kind, so I don't know that it would be SED process.
Yeah, I feel like I thought when we talked about it before, it was not, and that was one of
That
the
was one of the-
reasons why we
yep.
had selected it project.
Okay. Okay, but these do not have to happen in tandem. They can
Yeah.
happen
No.
separately. So Borthwick could happen in 2026, and let's say the town could not offer any assistance until 2027. It could happen then.
I mean, I think what it takes. We save in some hassle. It takes in time in our negotiation process with them and just getting everybody to the table and getting it locked in and getting the schedule locked in and you know, it's not that it's not worth it. I love shared services. So, you know, it saves you a whole bid process and all that because we're working with another government. So there's this thing that we just did with the boiler. That's not to that process.
I mean, can you share, is there another government you can share service with?
We share services with the school all the time. They don't have a paving crew, so that's not gonna help us.
They do paving though, they do paving. They
Maybe the
contract out.
county.
Hmm?
Maybe the county.
Maybe.
County.
No, I don't think we certainly, I would be happy to work with the county. I don't think I think our best bet of working with another local government that cares enough about us to even bother taking our calls
It's across the street.
is.
Yes, I mean, that seems to be in some ways an obvious
Yeah,
partnership.
Right. They have been nothing but willing to work with us. We have to deal with their realities, right? They have some realities. I don't run the town. I don't know what they all are, but they have everybody, top to bottom, has always been, we are absolutely willing to work with you. So that's awesome. So I
Yes.
just want to say that publicly and loudly.
Yes, and just for any town board members that are watching, we understand this isn't a done deal. We get that there's a process. We're just saying that we think that you're.
We love you.
We love you, that you could be good partners on this.
Yes.
Thank you.
So it could be, I mean, there could be a benefit to some delay, so with the Borthwick property, depending on how things go. Or what the plan turns out to be, I mean, there could be some paving, there could be. A loop drive-through, for example, or book drop-off of the Better World Bent books, or a driveway of, I don't mean,
Okay, I'm like-
I didn't mean, no. I'm not inventing some new thing, no curbside, no, it's just like. If we moved the book drop bins there, or you need, maybe you need a driveway or something, something, so maybe there would be a paving need, but. It could also be separate.
I mean, and also perhaps, again, maybe that sounds like that seems like a much lesser project than
Yes.
paving our giant, not so giant parking lot. It's an issue we know. That maybe we could work to coordinate something.
But I'm also in favor of
Pursuing both.
forward with both, because. Getting the house down is phase one. And, we're not gonna turn around immediately necessarily, and we'll have some time to think through. And get feedback from the public, the fiscal year may have ended by then, and we'll know what the surplus is and things like that, so.
Okay, so we have already voted to pursue taking down the Borthwick property. Which is what we're going to do. Does anyone on the board want to make a motion as related to the parking lot and whether we want to pursue that?
yeah, I'm welcome to move forward with the. Rehab of the parking opportunities here at the library.
All those in favor?
I'll second.
Oh, I'm so sorry, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, so we are now moving forward with the parking lot and with Borthwick. Okay, next from to discuss is. We have an idea of the budget to take down Borthwick property. What do we want as a board to look at as a budget to improve the Borthwick property? Then we're looking at a green space. We've bandied around some ideas, things like a food fridge, things like a native garden. It is possible that that might be a place for the Friends to have a permanent storage place. In which case we would want to talk to them more about it, but. Do we want to budget the $200,000 to $250,000 that Sherry has said is prudent, or do we want to be lower than that?
I would hesitate to budget for it yet because we really don't know how much the other things are going to cost. And I know that CJ has very large contingencies in his estimates. The boiler project being a prime example. So I would hesitate to say 250 when in the end we could spend 450. We don't know. And maybe that would enable nicer things.
We also don't know the quality of property. So we don't know when it's opened up and I'm agreeing with you. When it's opened up and the cellar is exposed, we don't know we don't know what's there, really.
I wonder if we can do some more investigating of costs too, like of some of the things we've talked about. I did take the liberty to start doing that, if that's okay. I reached out to the Schuylerville Library to see, I wanted to understand more the operational costs and the impact to staff or, long term, and pleasantly, I wasn't surprised, but it basically costs nothing to run this program. So grants might be another opportunity for us, either through working with the Upper Hudson Library System or the Friends Group. So there might be also supplemental funding to help cover some of the startup costs for some of the things we're talking about.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
so what do they do at Schuyler Hill?
So I'm so sorry. So Schuylerville is one of the libraries that participates in the Farm to Library program. So the Southern Adirondack Library System, which is that region system, they have several libraries that have fridges, either in their library or maybe outside, and they have partnerships with local pantries and farms to provide free, fresh produce to the community. And they were able to, the fridges were paid for through a grant that through the Southern Adirondack Library System. So the equivalent would be if maybe the Upper Hudson Library System, I've no, maybe. But I have contacts and things like that. So they do this for the community, which, is a different community than Bethlehem for sure. It's has a lot of rural poverty, but I think we're seeing huge increase in food insecurity in Bethlehem as well. So it could serve a nice service. But it really doesn't cost anything. But from a landscape, a site perspective, there has to be power somewhere. And so that's something that I don't quite understand, but if there was a storage something that had electricity, something to consider, but the very low, really no operational costs, library, very minimal impact for staff, lots of opportunities for volunteers to get involved in, really nice partnership opportunity at local farms and food pantries and things like that. So,
Well, in any case, I think that we can't know how much to budget for the project until we know how much we spent to take down the house and do the parking lot.
And, sorry.
No, that's it.
I absolutely agree with that. I think what I want to address is a communications issue with the public.
Yeah.
Which is that we have said all along that, we have made the initial decision to take down the house, that we would like public input on ideas of what to do with it. And I think that the public would want to have had some input. When they see that house coming down, I think that the public will want to know that they have had a chance to weigh in on what is going to go there. So I think that this may be a discussion for the communications committee to pitch to them. But when we involve the public, which I think we're probably looking at early 2026 to start garnering their ideas, we want to have, I think, a big part of that discussion for them is to know approximately how much money we intend to spend for two reasons. One, they want to know how much money we're going to spend. And two, to shape the ideas that are thrown out. I don't want any of the public to say, well, we're tearing down this property, this means that we can build a new children's section. I think we want the public to have realistic expectations of that. So I think we can certainly present the public, we know we have an estimate for the cost of the demolition. I think that we can.
Well,
We
can
can-
I
go ahead.
interject and say, I feel like this is like the spot where I feel like we went astray
Yep.
in the pond project, right? Is that we kept asking, what do you want? What do you want? People are like, oh, I want this, and I want a gold faucet, and I want a pony. But then when it comes down to it, they only want that stuff if it costs $10, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we need to approach this figuring out both aspects of it. So whether that's starting with a number to give them, I don't know, because I hear what you're saying. But I do think we can't just say, give us your ideas, because doesn't get us anywhere.
Well, what if you came up with a list of, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 things, like what we've been talking about?
Mhm.
And then another, a place for the public to make comments, other ideas.
Mhm.
These are the kinds of things we're thinking about, being mindful of a way to make it kind of vague, a minimal budget, or and that's probably not the right word, but something
Yeah.
like that.
So to your point, Michelle, which I think,
Without putting a number on it, because how can you put a number on something, you really have no idea how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah. Because to your point, Michelle, I think you're saying, okay, what if we said we can spend $250,000 to improve this, but really the demolition costs $100,000 less than we think, and we have an extra $100,000. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world to have the extra money to pursue extra ideas, but I think that we do want to give the public some parameters around, like I said, the ideas that were the level of ideas that we're thinking about here.
Yes, but you could say to the public, we're gonna do a $37 million project. And they're gonna say, wow, with that much money, you can put in an in-ground swimming pool indoors and, so the concept of. I'm not so sure giving them money, or a number rather, is gonna get to where you want to be.
And I think from a communications point of view, I guess what I don't understand is what the urgency is about making that decision. I just don't understand that. But I also think whatever you communicate has to be the house and the parking lot, because in order to do the parking lot, the library parking area, there's going to be a dramatic change to access to the library's parking area. And so
During construction.
during construction, right? But yeah. But the construction needs to be done in the spring and in the fall, can't be done during summer reading club, right? That would not be a great thing. So I think both of them go hand in hand, and maybe that's why Mark said strongly, yes, they go together. And I agree with that. So I think the communication needs to be about both.
Well, and I think there is just an issue. This is sort of, I think, what Laura was getting at. I don't know how much things cost. Like, I can save $50,000. What does that get us? Grass seed, or does that get us a swimming pool? I have no idea.
Maybe I
I think, so I would be comfortable, like, we don't have to make a formal decision necessarily. I think I would be comfortable saying to the public, we are generally looking at around $200,000 to $250,000. Could be library money, could be friends money, could be grant money, we don't know. But this is generally like to your point, to setting expectations. We are not planning a $5 million project here. We're planning a 200 to 250, and if it goes up, well, that's great.
Bonus.
Right.
But it gives us it does give us like a little some parameters, and we can share some of the things that we've been talking about, which are all so far pretty low budget items and low operational. I mean, to me, I also think that's important, and I do want to hear your perspective on that, Jeff. I mean, I've been really thinking about like the operations impact to staff and making sure that whatever it is not going to suddenly affect workload for staff and require you spending, staff spending a lot of time out
All right,
there.
I do think it's important for us to clearly communicate to the public that this in no way is going to be any sort of an expansion or annex of the library. There is the amounts of money that we're talking about. I know what people say that construction costs.
Yeah.
Wildly off.
Right.
In no way, what we're talking about is gonna get you more space in the children's room, some kind of, external meeting room, like none of that is in the cards. That's not what we're talking about. We wanna do that, it's a whole other different process.
Right.
What we're talking about is some sort of outdoor-ish space that, might or may not include some kind of storage or not. I think we should know whether what we're doing is going to include some electricity before we just go and knock a really nice water and electric service that exists currently. Before we just go and knock that down, I think we should know whether that's the intention of what we're talking about. If and this is, in some ways, this is a decision for the medium term that then becomes a gift to the library and future boards and future libraries about what might they want to do with that space in the future. I don't, what we're talking about here isn't about making some sort of permanent thing happen. We're talking about making, what can we do that is useful for the public, that is good and is a legitimate library use, because we have to do something with it. It can't just sit, it can't be just a grassy field. It has to be, because we have to start paying taxes on it. If it's not used for a library purpose, whether we own it or not, which we do, it has to be, you have to start paying property tax if it's not used. Right now, it's used for offsite record storage, and it's completely legitimate use for that property. So it has to be, it could be programs, like outdoor programs, like we just have some outdoor programs. Like that. As long as we're declaring that, I think we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is Nolan got themselves into a little bit of trouble with this with their library.
I don't agree with the idea of putting an amount of money on it, because once you give people an amount, they hold you to it. And if it's $10 more, I do think, to the concept of what you're saying, that we should be saying that we're going to be spending money from the library reserves, and we're not planning to have people do a bond referendum. But if we say $250,000 and spend $275,000, somebody is going to come and jump on us for not being honest. So to the concept of what you're saying, I totally agree, but to the number itself, I just don't think it's a good idea.
I mean, I think it's
Mark, you got something?
Yeah, I agree with you, Gail, on we should make it crystal clear that we're not bonding. That we have reserve money. I mean, that should be like over and over again, there's no anticipation of a bond. And that we're interested in what the community thinks within parameters, though. I think you're right, we lost kind of our way a little bit by trying to do everything for everyone. And that we should also look at our partners, friends. I think having storage for the friends is a great idea, honestly, because it frees up storage other places, and they are our partner, and they've been great with us. I think, we could probably talk to the Historical Society about non-staffed storage if they interested. Be very clear, it's not to replace anything, but it could be an enhancement to them. Like, look at our partners around the community and try to work with them. To that makes sense, and then use it for outdoor programming. I don't want to use it, as I said before, really opposed to parking. But I think it's gotta be, we should look to our natural partners and see, like, okay, if we can do something for you, then what should we do?
And I think there's not just our local partners. I mean, some of the things that we're talking about are very grant oriented.
Yeah,
It hits on a lot of points that I think there's a lot of large national organizations that could be interested. But I think we're hitting themes here, which is that we want to be careful about, and your point is very well taken, yeah, we want to be careful about issuing a price or a cost, because if we go over that, people are not going to like it. So I don't have a solution for that right now. I think that Laura's comments are heading in the right direction, where we need to give maybe a large range. But we need to put some parameters on what we're saying. We would like to do something within this general price range.
Again, I just I'm not so sure why why do we have to say a price range? We're doing a project, period.
I appreciate what,
It's not a public vote.
it's not, but I think the parameters is a theme, other than price. How could we parameter the discussion, the public discussion, input on what is done with this in a way that keeps clear and realistic expectations?
We can just be honest.
Yeah.
We can say that we are using as the community wanted and asked us to, we're looking at the library's reserves to fund these projects. Then we can say that we're not, we have to bid out, either way, we have to bid out the costs, right? So we're not sure of the cost. And then we can say, we are not bonding. And as we get more information, we will continue to communicate it with you. We're not asking you to vote. We're not asking you for more money. We are not asking you to pay for this with any additional funds. We are just asking, we are just communicating.
Okay.
I mean, you could put up, just trying to brainstorm here. You could put up a big awning over most of it and then say this is for library programs, or if other people want to do it. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with additional space. And if it's not an expansion, it's not gonna be, counted as library, it's extra.
Yeah, I'm not so sure, like, when the library, when Jeff decides on a new program, they buy new inventory, whatever, it's not newsworthy. It's not, I'm not so sure, I mean, I think maybe you seem to be, some people seem to be approaching it like it is another bond or something, and we have to include the community. You could say the library's doing a project, and then later on do a survey and say, hey, what are some ideas you might have? But other than that,
Or these are the
you
ideas.
do not need to say,
Yeah.
we're gonna bid out the process. You don't need to give them a potential cost, because again, people don't know construction costs.
I agree, and I think that that is definitely a point of view. This is the library's money. We're not asking the public for any more money. We are within our rights to, as a board, to choose what to do with those funds. Nonetheless, lessons learned from the bond for me personally, and that I'll put out to the board that I think we do need to be concerned about, is that this will be an extremely visible project. This is not Jeff buying books and you find, or buying a new thing for the library of things and you happen upon that. You say, oh, that's nice. This is going to be a giant project when you drive down Delaware on that day, as most people who live in this area do. You're going to see that building coming down. You're going to have questions about it. You're going to want to know what it costs. And most importantly, I think most people are going to want to know, what is this going to become? And has anyone asked me? And
That's the first question that comes up when I talk to people in the community, like, yeah, bought the Brooklyn house almost 10 years ago now, 2017, I think. And, the board to knock it down. Oh, and to do what? I mean,
Yep.
like we would say, I said, well, that's a little bit in play. We want to hear from people. There's a
But
lot of
that's my
ideas out
point.
there. Yeah,
That's the issue,
right.
not the
Yeah.
numbers, the cost, the bidding,
But,
it's
like,
not
some-
cost, not
There's
a-
gotta be some parameters.
Like, it's a modest, we're looking at modest improvements.
Modest,
Modest.
modest, some
Yes.
modest,
Modest.
small scale.
I mean, I do wonder if maybe we eventually wanna take this conversation to the community.
I agree.
I think so.
And we can come up with
Okay.
a way to frame it using terms like modest instead of using numbers. Just again, that managing expectations. We're not building a building of any kind in place of this building. So to set people's imaginations, so when they start imagining what might be there, they don't go to a building, they go to some modest.
Well, if you have
community
storage for the
resources.
friends, you need some sort of parameter.
But that's not a building,
Shed. It's
right?
not a
Yeah, not a
couple
building.
sheds,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one's-
Yeah.
I mean, another important thing
No,
is
agreed.
that
We're not adding on to the library, like,
Yes.
that I, as a board, I think it is important that this is our message. I think that in the bond, I would say plainly, that our message was hijacked and distorted by others. And I think that the board did not keep as strong a hold on the message that than it needed to. 20, hindsight is 20/20. But I think we can learn from those lessons here. But I think you're right that we need to bring this to the communications board. What I'm hearing, please add to my list what the communication, not the communications board, the communications committee, what we need to discuss is that, okay, our main points is that we understand the cost of the demolition. Okay? Anything the demolition and anything else done is going to be done through library reserves. Those are funds that we already have. We do not need to ask the public for funds. There will be no bond. We are seeking partnerships with the community and with other potential organizations that could bring the cost down or offer additional opportunities for the space. We want to look at the framing of parameters of what can be done with this, how we present this to the public, the theme being modesty. And I think the last point for the communications committee is how we bring the public into this discussion and when. I want to say publicly that I think the intent is to bring them in, is to have some public input early in 2026, as I believe it is a board goal to move forward with bringing down the property in 2026. We want to start those communications as soon as possible. We just want to make sure that we understand what we're communicating and, like we said, offer realistic expectations to everyone.
I really like the idea of having our first pass with what to do by working with our partners, by talking to the Friends and the Historical Association and the people who we work with all the time as a first pass, as outside voices to not just what the board wants, but what they might like to see. And then maybe presenting that list to the community at large. So it's a jury list that comes from all different parts of the community.
Before we move on from this, sorry, Michelle.
And I was just going to add in that traditionally, the way we have moved forward with committee work is that when a committee works on something, they bring it to the board, and it's the board that makes the decisions, not the committee.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that's clear.
Well, and I also want to say, I feel like there's like a bigger picture thing here, I think, and that is that maybe someday we will want to do another bond. And so if we are putting into place ways that we communicate with the community or things that are successful, that helps set us up better for that next time we do need to ask for money. So like, I hear what you're saying, like, well, we're not gonna ask them for money, and so maybe but I think it could help us to sort of like learn the process and set the stage for.
I agree with you, Sarah. I think this is an excellent opportunity to set up any potential ventures and learn from lessons. Of the past, continue to learn lessons and have this opportunity to see what works well. Before we move on from this topic, just so that we have some ideas for part of the discussion of what could be done with the property, I have a native plant garden, I have a food fridge, we have storage for the Friends, potentially something with the Historical Society, we have book bins, we have an awning space. Are there any other ideas that have been bantied about that I'm missing?
Talked about community garden, which is complicated, but in addition to it, if we're gonna do garden, like it's a native plant or community.
How big is the property? I mean, you sent me, but
Yeah.
it was 72,000 square feet. I think so.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could do a sensory garden. That was something that I really.
Yes, those are.
I was really sorry that got lost through the bond. I thought that was a really wonderful thing.
I have one small little thing, a little free library. Lots of public libraries have free libraries. Low budget, low operation, but high reward.
Something I thought of, it seems very random, but a labyrinth. And what I mean by that is like on the ground,
Yeah.
right? Because kids like to do it, and it's also like a meditative thing for adults. I don't know. I just
Yeah,
thought
and you can change them a lot by if you're just, like you said, on the ground, you're just spray painting them. Or I don't know if you're spray painting them, if you're doing something else.
I've seen them with like sand and rocks.
Rocks.
Yeah.
And for
Is there any way that it could be used for the stage area, or you would want to keep the stage area where it is?
I have concerns about that. I mean, we can do anything, but I think the size of the space that's there, it's
Too close to the road?
too close to Borthwick Avenue. The nice part about where the green is now is that, yes, it does border the parking lot, but people are moving at parking lot speeds, not Borthwick Avenue speeds, though sometimes parking lot speeds approach Borthwick Avenue speeds. I think it's a little bit more contained on the interior of the property. I mean, it's better than if it was on Delaware, which would be a terrible idea. And I don't think it's not to that scale. It's not a green scale. That said, you could have, I mean, a lot of places would have a gazebo. And if you were gonna have a smaller outside performance, you could do more like a 4th of July bandy kind of thing out there. There are things you can do with that much space. I think I would feel remiss if I didn't say, when we talk about storage for the Friends, it's not just storage for the Friends, it's storage for a book sale, right? And so I think it's important to mention that as a choice because it's, storing the materials that we have to in the library for the book sale is a significant challenge that we have, right? So it's not just the storage of the signs. That's what they were expressing, that they're, the supplies for the Friends are tucked literally all over the place in the library. At the same time, it's the storage of the materials, which we used to move out the withdrawn materials faster, and now we hold for at least 6 months while we.
And also a bit of climate control.
Correct, and that's, you're not gonna want any,
So the backyard shed that you buy at the Walmart.
is not what we're talking about, right? And that's something where that's probably getting well outside your budget, and you would have to work with the Friends to fundraise that. So I would feel remiss if I didn't mention that as a choice, but I think it doesn't have to be that, because right now we're surviving with what we're doing with the Friends, with their stuff spread all over the place in the library and the way we're storing the books. We make it work. So I think, some sort of outdoor programming space is also helpful. So.
I love the idea of covered space out there too, since we have all this nice green space in the back. That's mostly shady and kids can run around when there's not happening.
Right.
Be nice, you're gonna have like a reading circle or some kind of programming covered, whether that's pavilion-like or awning, whatever.
I'll add one, which is something that demonstrates solar power, like the picnic tables that are solar powered and can charge your devices on them. I think that would be I'm sure there's other opportunities to demonstrate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you guys. Good discussion, a very good discussion. I think we keep this moving forward. We will try. I recognize this might be a challenge as we are heading into that time of year. For the communications committee to start this discussion. Is it November? Okay. Before the December meeting, so that we can, like we said, start those communications, keep those communications moving into early 2026. Thanks, everyone. Okay, a couple quick items. The long range
Before we
plan.
get to that,
Oh,
we had a
goodness.
tiny little program holiday.
Oh, I read. So, okay, so the program policy, you wanna go? We wanna do this in 2 ways, which is we want. Our thanks to Sarah, and that she recognized something that could be considered inconsistent with our other policies in this policy. I would say that technically it's not, because these are about library programs, and the library policies are for patrons. The library itself does reserve certain privileges to operate differently than our patrons do. But in the interest of transparency and consistency, Sarah noted this, and we want to take out the line that says the only items that may be sold are books and recordings by authors and musicians. On the idea that items, we have in other policies that items should not be sold at the library. That should be true of library programs as well. Do you have anything to add to that?
I do have lots to add to that. So this was a quickly developing thing. So I had some conversations with the programming staff, both got kicked off last week and then had the discussions today, so we're literally hot off the presses with this. There are, just to be aware, that there are plenty of programs that have happened in the past and they currently happen that do involve an author coming and then having the books for sale in the back of the program. It's the library's program, and whether it's our own program or many of the programs that we do in partnership with the Bethlehem Historical Association, this is one of the methods to get those speakers here. So it might impact, I mean, we likely have some that are already scheduled that would include that, so we have to work on that. Grandfather that in, and then it might change our conversations with folks as we have the authors here. Just something to be aware of. It's you know, in my conversations with the staff today, it wasn't that it's not possible. It might lead to a greater number of speakers fees, like if we want to have an author come in, part of what they're getting is that for sale. It's never very many. You know, we're not talking about when Sue Grafton comes to visit. That's a whole, we don't, I mean, getting major authors is so expensive now. We just tend to not do that stuff. So it's not those large authors that can,
We don't have the room.
we don't have the room. We definitely don't have the room.
Right.
And we just, the authors are so expensive now. It's like, we're not gonna get, you know, a Chris Bajalian kind of author. Did anybody still read Chris Bajalian?
I saw him here.
Fantastic. Okay, very good. So that would be, any sale like that would be handled by the Friends of the Library. They would work, part of get the books here. That would be done as a fundraiser for the Friends of the Library. That's still in this current policy, but just so we're aware that if we make this change, and I know we're working on a larger rewrite of this entire policy, this is just something that we would be.
Yep.
I know, just technically, no fees to be charged to people approval, totally get that. You can't charge them if some come in. We're taking the one item sold, so we're taking that out.
Correct.
We're
But we're
proposing,
saying the Friends of the Library must handle the sale of any items. So
Correct.
like, we're taking,
So,
With a non sequitur.
yeah,
It's like, it feels like, I mean, I had to read this
yeah.
so many times, to understand, I mean, I understood what was happening eventually, but I don't think it's clear what we're trying to do here.
are these the changes that came out of the discussion with the staff?
So we're being silent about,
No, I mean, are these?
I don't know, come in and sell the books.
Yeah, it's okay.
Like,
so no, this is
I would
just,
say, yeah, because you're saying not to sell many items, so.
Any item.
even though we
This seems like
took
it puts the responsibility on the Friends, so
Right.
it sounds like
It
we're
is.
still allowing book sales to happen.
we're not talking about book sales, so like, we'll just, so sorry,
No, so if an author comes in and wants to sell his book, his or her books in the back.
correct.
But if we do these changes, is that allowed?
The only way it would be allowed would be through the Friends of the Library.
And what if you have a local somebody on Evenings on the Green, a music group? They would not be able to sell their CDs either, correct?
Only through the auspices of the Friends of the Library, if they even have a mechanism to do that. which
But the
is-
Friends sponsor the great thing, so like already they're like, you know.
Yeah, but they would be literally handling the sale.
I mean, the friends would have to come and set up a table and
Correct.
say, hi, we are the Friends of the Library. We are selling this author's books. So I just want to reframe this for a second, which is that, first of all, I want everyone to be aware that the staff has lots of recommendations about this policy
Okay,
that we are not addressing tonight. We will address at another time.
okay,
Okay, so that's putting that over to the side. The second thing is that this issue was raised appropriately by Sarah in a reading of this. So the discussion that we want to have tonight is in the interest of consistency with our other policies, do we want to make some changes to this section that we are looking at? Or do we want to adjust this wording? Do we want to keep it as it is, understanding that taking away the ability to sell books at an author event could affect in some ways the speakers fees that we are charging or the ability to get authors?
Well, so since I was the one that when I read it, I was like, oh my God, like this just
only being consistent.
totally like contradicts what we've been saying, like that major conversations have happened about people selling books at events where the author was here. And there has been major repercussions for that. So when I read this, I personally felt confused, like, oh my gosh, this needs to be rewritten. I do see now that the difference is supposed to be that if there's a library sponsored event, that it is up to the library's discretion if that author or performer is going to sell their items. The way it was written does not make that very clear.
Fair enough.
And so I felt like it needed to be written to be much more glaringly obvious that the only items that may be sold are books and recordings by authors and musicians only applies when it is our program. So I don't personally know that this change actually solves what I wanted it to solve. I just think it needs, that sentence doesn't necessarily be deleted. Instead, it needs an additional sentence that like really just explains or hammers home that these items, like sales only happen with library sponsored programs.
That makes a lot of sense, because I think this if we were to rewrite it like this, I think it actually opens up more questions than it answers, so and not having known the context for this, it was extra confusing, and I know I could have just asked.
Well, it was over the weekend, so,
Yeah.
so I guess
Well, can I give some more background?
yes,
or-
please do.
I mean, so there was a potential event scheduled for there to be an author talk sponsored by the Historical Society and us about the Roosevelts at Christmas. And it was asked to be changed. And so then the Historical Society reached out and kind of wanted to know some follow-up about our policies, which is what led me to policies to be looking at it. So this really didn't have anything to do with that, but that's how I got into the policy.
It is, I mean, I think there is, because the book sales have been so controversial and the public does not understand the difference between a community group event. I mean, we live this, right? I certainly do. I have a very clear definition in my head. I am sponsoring a library program. This is what we do over here. Community group comes in, they do whatever kind of cockamamie thing they want to do. It's fun. When you're doing this over here, no book sales. Right, I get that in my head, but I also understand that if someone were to look at this, they're like, well, I'm doing a program at the library. I'm like, you're not in partnership with us. You are using a room. And that was the crux of the confusion was that. So I get it. The question I guess I have for tonight is, do we need to make a change tonight on this? Or do we need to take an overall look at this program? Because we definitely need this program probably needs a major update. So is it something that needs to be addressed, is so glaring that it needs to be addressed tonight? Or is it?
Or are we okay with the way it reads currently? Or do we want to just, to Sarah's point, leave it as is with the ability to potentially address it later and put at the front of the section that's currently deleted in red, something that makes clear that these activities are only allowed at library sponsored programs?
Can we change the title to say policy for Bethlehem Public Library program sponsored programming, so that it's
Yep.
clear that it's not just any program at the library?
I think that would help. I don't think that alone would communicate to the public the distinction though.
Well, I'm in favor of postponing the discussion, but I'm wondering if we can just make that change. If that needs to be voted on, or we can just say in title that it's a programming policy for their sponsored programs.
And did I hear you say that that staff is making some input on this and there's gonna be greater changes down?
There's
the
a
road?
whole.
Yeah, there is
For
a
us.
whole community rewritten policy.
I would just wait until
Yeah.
revised.
Okay. Then we don't think that this, I mean, if anyone has questions about this, we will point them to this discussion at the board meeting. But I think the immediate concern is that a patron would read this and view it as inconsistent with our other policies without something that is explicitly explaining that things can be sold pursuant to this policy because it is about library sponsored programs. But it sounds like what we're hearing is that we are okay with the way it is. And that we will make any changes to this section along with a general overhaul of the policy, which will have significant input from a programming staff. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't capture that.
Yeah. No, it was a good thing, I think,
Yeah.
I think that we want to be consistent and we want to be transparent. And I think this is a very good example of that. So thank you, Sarah.
Well, and the question that I was answering, part of the issue with that was because that program is a joint program.
Yep.
You know, our policies applied to it, whereas if it was a different type of program, those policies wouldn't.
Right, and that's, I mean, it is a subtle, or it doesn't seem subtle in my brain, but it confuses people routinely. When I'm like, you can have the room. It's a nonprofit agency that meets all the conditions that we've got set out in our meeting room policy. You can have the room and you can, you know, as far as content is concerned, you're completely in control of the content in there. You just can't sell anything, right? It's just, that's a non-content piece of that, so. All right, thank you, sorry.
No, it was,
Okay.
okay, long range
Discussion.
plan. We need to decide what to do with our long range plan. And I believe that we had discussed at the last board meeting, Jeff, keep me honest, which is that we would extend the current long range plan, and there is a long range plan committee. And that the long range plan committee would commit to meeting and examining the long range plan and updating it throughout 2026. So am I correct that we need to take a vote to extend the long range plan?
Because it is in effect through the end of 2025.
Yes, long range for everyone, long range plans go in 5-year increments,
However long.
about 5 years.
3 to 5.
This one was 5 years, right?
Three.
This one, great, sorry.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is expiring at the end of this year. We do not have a new one ready to go for a lot of reasons, mainly, which is that we are recalibrating our long range plan. So we just need to make a vote to extend it so that we have one in place, which we are required to do. What law, statute, regulation?
Regulation.
And we will work on making the appropriate changes to it.
Do we have to set a date? And we're extending it for a year?
You do, yeah, I mean, I mean, I guess that's the nature of the discussion is creating a long range plan can be a bunch of work for a board. I'm here to help, staff is here to help, believe me, we want to have input on this as well. The question is, how long do you think is reasonable? A year, right? So that's what I mean, it's kind of here. So then in that case, you set a reasonable, if we're done before that, great, then the new policy comes in, boom, it drops in and it's ready to roll. So
We're talking about the services.
it's
We're talking about. Because we've done, on the website, there's a building plan and there's a services.
correct. We've split that in the past. It doesn't have to. Lots of libraries don't. It's just a long range, it's a strategic plan. And it's you know, there's a bunch of guidance on this from Upper Hudson. There's workshops that we can take in there, and they encourage us to continue to not put so much operational stuff in our. This is about how the board thinks about the library strategically. Where is it that we want to be 3 years from now where we're not today, right? And so it's like back out of a bunch of the little fiddly operational things, which I mean, I love because I go check, you know, look, we've done with this. It's really more about strategy. It's, you know, where do we want to be organizationally? Is it about funding? Is it about, you know, building size of collection, all those things. And it is, you know, we're doing a lot of long range planning stuff now,
Yes.
at least medium range planning about the capital stuff. It can't not be part of it. And they touch on each other a lot, so.
Yeah, we're doing, as Jeff said, we are doing it. We kind of just have to put it within, we have to put the framework that all of this.
But this is it's along with the mission statement, and frequently when you do a long range plan, you look at the mission statement. And we've looked at our mission statement a lot of times. These are for the staff. These are our foundational documents. When we look at a program that we want to do or not, I go back and I look at the long range plan and I go, this is where the board says, this is our goal. So, you know, when I look at right now, we have equity and inclusion as one of the top 3 things that we talk about. And then we have some operational stuff about how we think we're going to do that. But that's one of our core goals right now in our long range plan. So we go back to that when we're talking about what programs are we doing, what collections are we doing. how are we handling this? So that's what the board needs to think about. And it is, it's easy to want to get it done, but it's also very important when we think about, this is how we communicate to the public, we communicate to the staff, and we think about what it is that we want to do with this thing that we're in charge and we are charged with caring for. What do we want to do with this? What can we do for the community? Is it, I'm gonna get into talking about specifics, but I'm trying not to do that, but that's where we are. Yes, Jill, we need a tape. I'm sorry, I yapped too much. I apologize. I get excited about that.
The long range plan is important to check.
It is important, very important.
Wait, is that?
I move that we extend the long-range plan for 1 year.
I second that.
All those in favor? The motion passes. The long range plan is extended for a year.
I mean, necessarily what that will be, because we have knocked off a lot of things in there. What I'm gonna be doing is taking those 3 strategic areas and moving forward with them in ways that we'll have more conversations about as we go through the year.
Okay. Jeff, the retirement bill has
The
come.
retirement bill is here and it arrived in time, and the timing of this is always difficult, but I'm very happy that the board meeting was late enough that the retirement bill, the New York State and local retirement bill, is here. If we pay before December 15th, we owe $390,285. If we don't, if we wait till February, we have to pay about $3,000 or $2,800 more. So we get a massive savings by paying early. But I'll take $2,800. In the end, we do have to vote on this. It is well outside my authorization limit for what I'm allowed to pay without board approval. However, we don't really have a lot of choice. Some past board elected us into the New York State and local retirement system, and we are on rails with it. So this bill is here, and the bill comes due, and there it is. But I do need your approval.
That's $70,000 more than last year. I'm just looking at the budget in the packet,
Yeah.
and it says in 24-25, the bill was, what we budgeted for was $324,000.
Right.
This year's budget, we have $376,000.
Yeah.
So we're $20,000 budgeted.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, the total is up.
And is that because the percentage has gone up? Where does that $70,000 come? Just grossly, I
I
don't
mean-
want is it that there's more employees? Is it that our salary increases have impacted it? Is it all of the above?
Yeah,
'Cause
and
that's a lot of money, $70,000 more.
well, 70,000, that's, I mean, this is the comptroller tells us what that is, and it's to do with the market, it's to do with those enormous actuarially determined 5-year smoothing bills that come from the comptroller's office. This is well above my pay grade to understand. I mean, I understand some of this. We certainly have more employees who are actually employed here, not more than we had budgeted for, but we had increased the number of employees versus budget. But when we had higher staff turnover post-pandemic, they're dealing with the realities of how many people are actually here. That's what your bill's based on. So,
It's that in gross salaries, is it not? Sharon, do you know?
it's. So we can roll down in the bill here. We'll just go right.
No, just, you don't need to go for, I just.
It is gross salary. So this is,
Total number of salaries in each level, what, they look at all the employees, who participate
The
in
rate.
the library.
yeah, so these are.
And this is the rates.
So
based on the
rates must
tiers.
have increased.
Yeah, I mean, and these are set by the comptroller,
And of course, salary goes up, salaries go up every year.
Okay.
so there's a net shift you can see if you just want to talk about it generally here, you'll see that, tier 4. So here's the bulk of our, until fairly recently.
Twos and threes.
We do. So we have, $1 million of salary that the library spends is in tier 4, but for this year specifically, maybe the first time that tier 6 is actually significantly larger than the tier 4 group, and that's just to do with retirements, right?
It has to do with retirements and turnover.
Correct. And so this, when they made the tier 4, tier 5, which lasted like an hour and a half, and then went to tier 6 and the 2 parts of tier 6 here. these are those reimbursement rates as percentage of salary. So when you say, how do they determine this? It's literally percentage of salary as determined by the New York State fiscal year, which is different than both our fiscal year and a calendar year. And they come in and they give us our bill.
I wonder if the rates will.
I'm sure they do. I mean, that's to do with the response to the market too, because it's a heavily invested fund, and as rates do whatever it is that rates do. When the market's up, we never seem to get as much of a bounce from it as I think it's gonna. It doesn't keep the cost down as much as I think it's going to. But certainly, I mean, if you remember back to we just talked, we had the accountant here, and she said, what are the 3 biggest risks that the library has? Healthcare, those benefits in healthcare, right? That's an unknown cost. This bill is an enormous and uncontrollable cost. We don't set it. There's very little we can do about it other than.
We have nothing to do with it. We just,
Correct.
we're at their mercy.
And then the value of the property and, how does that work? So those are 3 big risks, and there are 3 numbers that we budget for. So we'll get an estimate. We got our estimate that went into our budget last year. I have an estimate as we do the budget this year. I've got an estimate for next year, but it's never exactly the same as.
Yeah,
as
it was just the 70,000 is a huge increase.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move we pay the $390,285. Second.
All those in favor? Motion's passed.
I'm gonna make you go on.
No, it's okay. It's a thing that exists, and it's a lot like healthcare costs. It's we didn't budget for a 22% healthcare RCO.
So they were kind of conflated today. Did we have any other new or old business?
So I have a proposal which should be a single sheet in your packet for the Public Library Association, attendance at the Public Library Association Conference, which is this year in April in Minneapolis. Unfortunately, it does butt up right against Easter, and nothing says fun like April in Minneapolis, because that's where library conferences go. Off-season rates. So my proposal is to send 2 people the conference registration, airplane tickets, hotels for 3 nights, meals and incidentals, totaling about $2,100 per person, a little bit more. I'd like to send 2 folks to that, and I'm just putting some unknowns in there. I do not know what transportation to and from. It depends on the hotel. Some hotels include transportation costs, some of them don't. There's not a great, like we go to Portland, there's a great airport to downtown train. They don't have that in Minneapolis, so I don't know what that's going to cost. But because it's an overnight conference, I need to seek board permission before we send anybody in like a regional conference. There's no overnight, or I could just send people. So
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
because it's a conference you need, because this is clearly below your.
It is, but it's an overnight. It's in our conference program policy. We can look at that too. But it's in that policy for sending people overnight. The board needs to expressly give permission to send people on
I
an
think we need
overnight.
to look at their policy.
Yeah, that's fine.
And we always, haven't we always sent people to this? Yeah, okay.
Make a motion to approve.
I second.
All those in favor? The motion passes.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any public participation?
I just wanted to say hello, really. My name is Billy Newton, resident of town, long-time resident. Recently retired, semi-retired from the energy industry, engineering construction. So I heard you talking about boilers, I got all excited. I did have a couple questions more for the engineer, or folks, you folks with that, but I just put it out there that, I'd like to try to find out how I can stay abreast of, the kind of the physical plans. It sounds like you're putting off any thoughts about reconfiguring the building and all that kind of thing at this point, but I'd like to know how to stay abreast of that. And I'm offered to be a sounding board.
Great, thank you. And if you have questions, you can give them to me and I will get them to the engineer for the questions answered. If I can't answer them, we'll get them answered for you.
And you can give them your contact,
Yeah.
contact.
Okay.
Anything online, Jeff?
That is a good question, Caroline. There's so few, it was so important during
The ones that you
COVID.
don't ask is. the
No one
ones
asks
that
me
you don't
anymore. Nope,
Okay.
no one loves me by email.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Don't move, Michelle.
I'll second that.
Jill, second, all those in favor? Thank you, everyone.